Welcome to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I am your host, Jay Taylor. I'm here today with Collin Kettell. Collin was with me, I think, once before on Turning Hard Times into Good Times, but I'm really glad to have him with me today. He is quite an active investor in the mining space, for sure. He's a founder of Nevada King Gold Corp, which is the one I want to talk to him today about, but he's also has been a founder of some other very well-known companies that I cover in my newsletter, Newfound Gold, for example, and Palisades Gold Corp. And I do hope to talk to Collin sometime in the future, or have him talk to my followers sometime in the future with regard to those stories too, which are very exciting stories that I like a lot. But the reason I wanted to talk to him today about Nevada King is because they just put out a resource that's about twice as much, a little more than twice what the old resource was. They have over 1 million ounces now, but I don't think by any means that's the end of the story. Before I say hello to Collin, let me just tell you that you can buy Nevada King in Canada under NKG, and you can buy it in the US under NKGFF. 424 million shares outstanding, selling at about 11 cents in US money. That means it has a market cap of around $46 million. In other words, a very inexpensive company, I think, with over 1 million ounces in one of the best jurisdictions in the world, that being Nevada. Also, it's important to note that the company's shares are tightly held, with about 38% in the hands of management, 11% in institutional hands. So the float is not all that large, I believe, but I think this is quite a good story, and I wanted my subscribers to see Collin in person and also to get his take on what the future might hold for Nevada King. Thank you so much for joining me, Collin.
Yeah, Jay, thanks for having me back on the program. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really good to hear from you. Don't see that much of you for a guy that's so active, so I'm really pleased that you could join us. Well, your project is the Atlanta Gold Project, a former producing mine in southeastern Nevada. When did you pick it up, and why did you pick it up? What did you see there that attracted you to the project?
Back in 2020, we were offered this project by a company that was transitioning to a marijuana issuer at the time. And market conditions for juniors was particularly grim. And I happened to have a relationship with somebody at that company where I was able to get a hold of the project. So the main basis on which we picked it up is it had about a 500,000 ounce resource. We were able to get it for $1 million. Sometimes you don't have to do a great level of due diligence on something when a price point is so obviously low. Once we picked it up, we began to get a lot more intrigued by the project quite quickly. The project had been in production from 1975 to 1985, an open pit. About 100,000 ounces of gold were pulled out of it. Went out of production in 85, so that would have been after gold prices would have tanked. And then a couple large outfits, Kinross and Goldfields, ended up exploring this thing, and they found a lot of high-grade hits, but for various reasons, just priorities and different focuses from the companies, it continued to fall through the cracks. And long story short, we got a hold of it. What stuck out to us initially, aside from the high grades, was the fact that the geological model that the existing resource was based on seemed very simplistic, and it didn't necessarily reflect what Cal Heron, our VP of exploration, thought that he saw from looking at it from the surface. And I don't want to bore your listeners with too much background. I think it's helpful to give a little bit here to explain what's different now against what was there in the past. The crux of it is the old model saw a single vein that dipped 45 degrees to the west, controlling all the gold mineralization. This is a very simple model, easy to understand. Simple means not complex means not big. And that was what was plaguing Atlanta. Atlanta is not on a main trend. Most of the elephant deposits in Nevada are, of course, found on a main trend. However, there are outliers to that. So Cal immediately identified there was actually multiple faults coming up, vertical, subvertical faults, that were each responsible for channeling this high-grade gold mineralization to surface. And so with that theory in place, we did, in a very small initial drill program. We hit some high grade. The highlight hole from that would have been 50 meters of 5 grams, right starting near surface. We then launched a phase 2 program, which we completed over a 2.5 year period from 2022 to 2024. And then per the request of doing this interview and the basis on which we're doing it, we've now formalized an updated resource
Hmm.
based on our phase 1 and phase 2 drilling. And we're quite excited by the results of it. We have seen, as you suggested, a doubling in the overall ounces. When you look at the measured and indicated ounces, we've seen more than a doubling. So we've seen about 120% increase, and we've broken through that very important psychological mark of 1 million ounces,
Hmm.
and that's just in the measured and indicated category. That's not in the inferred category. So when we talk about the 1,019,000 ounces, we're talking
Yeah,
high confidence ounces.
sure. No doubt about it. And I mean, I think the grade, I don't know if you just mentioned the grade, 1.2 grams per ton. That was the average grade?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a 1.14 grams, 1.14 grams per ton average grade just on
Uh-huh.
gold. If you put the silver in there and do a gold equivalent, I think you're at about 1.2 grams per ton.
Okay.
And I'm just bringing this chart up if you can see it,
Yes.
which is something our president put together, John Sklodnik. And this is showing any deposit that's oxide over 1 million ounces in the
Hmm.
United States and showing the average grade. And you can see we're in the number 2 position here
Yeah.
in terms of the grade.
Yeah.
So it really sticks out from that perspective.
Very important. And then, of course, you're also in a very good jurisdiction. I'm looking at some of these other names. Well, some of them are also in Nevada. I recognize a couple of them, but not all of them. And I would rather be in Nevada, let's say, than Mexico, although we have a lot of good projects in Mexico as well. But yeah, so I mean, looking at current prices, $129 a ton or something like that, current gold prices, and oxide. I understand that most of your project, most of your mineralization is oxide, even at considerable depth. Is that right?
Correct. So the entirety of the resource that we've put out contemplates oxide mineralization.
Hmm.
There's extremely minimal mineralization encountered that would be sulfide related. You're talking maybe 1% or thereabouts. So we don't contemplate that. There's no point in looking at processing something that constitutes such a small amount. And what does set Atlanta apart from most projects you have an oxide layer, you have a
Hmm.
transition zone, and you have a sulfide. And I think that's very important for investors, particularly newer ones coming into the space as gold prices are picking up. This is something that took me so long to grasp the magnitude of myself is all ounces are not created equal. Yes, there's
Sure.
something to be said for multi-million ounce deposits. That's where we want to go. But there's a lot of baggage that various deposits can have, and it's at the end of the day, being able to economically extract them and make money is what's going to drive share price appreciation.
Right. You mentioned silver. How valuable is silver? It's not a real big deal, is it? The silver value in terms.
No, it's not a huge deal. There's probably on a gold equivalent basis, we're talking around 7 or 8% of the overall deposit.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
Well,
there, there, there's some intrigue on the silver at Atlanta because a couple miles away on the other margin of the rim, the Caldera Rim. So Atlanta itself is deposited on one edge of essentially an old volcano.
mhm.
A couple miles away, there's another historic mine called Silver Park that we also own.
Mhm.
And Silver Park, as the name would suggest, was a silver mine. And so this district is capable of depositing in certain areas ratios where the silver is actually much, much more significant than the gold. But in the Atlanta deposit area itself, while the silver is important, it's a relatively small component.
Mhm. All right. Well, I heard you mention a minute ago, multi-million ounce potential here. You've got a little over 1 million ounces now. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about your plans to explore and develop and find those one, two, three, four, or however many more millions of ounces might be there. Also, you have a very large project. You mentioned this caldera. What is the sort of size of your overall holdings there?
The project is roughly 1,500 claims, with each claim in the United States being 20 acres. So
Hmm.
you're talking a very significant project area. And broadly speaking, the claim package wraps around the full caldera. So this caldera is approximately 6 kilometers in diameter.
Hmm.
I'm far from a geologist, so I only regurgitate information that I pick up along the way and try to understand myself. But
Hmm.
effectively, there's a roughly circular feature that was a caldera that exploded some 30 million years ago. And the fluid that came up during this event was mineralizing, at least at certain portions of it. And obviously, uh, the Atlanta resource zone itself received a nice amount of these mineralizing fluids, and maybe in several flashes of mineralization coming up. And what we believe is that we're in a district scale setting that most likely is not going to have just a single example of
Hmm.
mineralization being deposited. One thing that gives us great hope on that is Atlanta is unique in the system in that the gold and silver mineralization were literally sticking out of the surface, and so it was
Hmm.
discovered by old timers in the late 1800s and mined at that time. Most of the rest of the district is covered in various places by a thin layer of volcanic till or overburden that was overprinted by other activity in the
Hmm.
area. And so what that means is there
Hmm.
could be something hidden right under the surface, and really very little energy and time has been put into looking throughout the district. And so that's what we started to do a few months ago with
Hmm.
our phase 3 program. And so wrapping it all together, we think we are in the right setting. We now know that the Atlanta area itself has over 1 million and high grade ounces. It takes probably a significant size system or mineralizing event to generate something like Atlanta.
Hmm.
And based on the amount of gold that we do see throughout the rest of the district, we think that there's a very, very good shot that Atlanta is not the whole picture. So we are focused on going ahead and unlocking the multi-million ounce potential of this district. And the way we're going to do that is by having another discovery.
And so what allows you to see underneath the covered areas where there might be some mineralization? You got some technical tools that are being used perhaps to discover structures that might be fluid bearing or what?
Yeah, exactly. So we have done quite a bit of geophysical work.
Hmm.
We actually just hosted the Geological Society of Nevada at the property last weekend. So they actually selected Atlanta as the project that they wanted to bring essentially a group of 20 geologists out to site to see.
Hmm.
And we do talk quite a bit about the tools that we're using to see under the surface in our news releases. We're quite verbose in our news releases, but the group was actually blown away by the amount of science that our small team is working away doing to try to unlock what's under the cover.
Hmm.
So we've had a lot of luck with CSAMT that we've been using. We've
Yeah.
run
Hmm.
3 different series of that, and what it shows us is different resistivity of rocks, so we can see
Hmm.
if there's changes in rocks under the overburden. And we know from Atlanta what hosts the gold mineralization. We also know how important the faults are as feeders for fluid to come up. So if we see some very obvious faulting that shows up in the CSAMT that happens to coincide with the margin of the caldera and
Hmm.
also happens to be in a low resistivity environment, we know that, hey, that's a very good target. And
Hmm.
so that's what led us to having our recent intercept at Silver Park, which we're stopping short of calling a discovery quite yet, but we hit 25 meters of 1.11 gram gold equivalent
Yeah.
pretty close to surface, and that's
Hmm.
a great start.
Sure is. Wondering some of these high grade values that you've been reporting on. But first of all, we're looking at an open pit scenario, right?
Correct. So the entire resource is an
Is
open
open
pittable
pitable.
resource
Okay.
model.
Okay. So likely these structures go deeper, I would imagine. But you're still seeing oxides in these high grade zones.
Yeah, yeah, that's the unique part. We know that the resource remains open to the west.
Hmm.
And this is probably a good segue into, and I can share a
Sure.
diagram that we put out in the Silver Park release we put out a couple months ago.
Uh-huh.
Over on the right side here, we have a schematic. This is exaggerated vertically intentionally
Sure.
so that
Hmm.
it tells the story. But you see what is roughly the resource over on the right side in red coming up to surface and then dipping down. And so we know that the mineralization continues off to the west. But it was getting deeper, and so we didn't want to spend the money and time to continue chasing mineralization deeper. We want to find
Uh-huh.
more shallow mineralization.
Sure.
Our understanding at the time was that this would continue deepening until the center of the caldera. And so,
Hmm.
it could get very, very deep and not be something you would chase. Well, what we now understand from doing our drilling at Silver Park over 2 kilometers away
Hmm.
is the unconformity that controls the mineralization at the Atlanta resource area and does dip off deep to the west,
Oh.
then begins to start shallowing,
Huh.
and it
Huh.
shallows out quite a bit to the point where it's only 30 meters deep in hole 21, where we hit it
Wow.
2 kilometers away.
Oh.
Um, we we believe very strongly, and I'll leave this to the scientists in our group, and they've laid it out very well in the news releases, but that this is the same mineralizing event responsible for putting mineralization at Silver Park that is responsible for depositing the
Oh.
mineralization at Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
And the last point I will mention, which I find very interesting, is around the periphery of the Atlanta resource, we find high silver, low gold.
Hmm.
At Silver Park, it was a high silver, low gold mine. And the
Hmm.
hole in SP21 we hit is high silver, low gold, which is why we've reported it in a gold equivalent to try to
Hmm.
express the significance of it.
Hmm.
Well, we recognize at Atlanta that there was two different mineralizing events. One of them was high silver, low gold, and then there was the high gold, lower silver, which is where we get the big deposition of gold at Atlanta. So the question is, of course, if this is indeed the same mineralizing event and it's shallow over at Silver Park and we're hitting high silver, low gold, are we near to something where we could actually start finding the higher gold, low silver, which is what we're most keen on finding?
Hmm. Interesting. Wow. Yeah. That's very exciting then. It's fortunate that you found something near surface like you did. On these high grade values, those high grade zones, how wide are they, more or less?
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. So they're controlled by the vertical and subvertical faults that come up, and we do find high grade on several of the north, south, and east, west faults that run through the Atlanta resource.
Mhm.
They can be up to 100 meters thick. So there's several instances where we've hit 100 meters of 3 grams. We even hit 100
Cool.
meters of 11 grams, which was our best hole ever.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, how quickly does the mineralization dip off in grade as you step away
Yeah.
from
That's
those
what I was
faults?
gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the best way we've characterized it is they tend to be somewhere between 20 and 30 meters thick before the
Uh-huh.
grade has dropped off enough that we're more to moderate grade.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. And metallurgical work, I'm sure some has been done. Of course, it was a previous mine, so you would have some information from that.
Correct. Yeah. So we have the old records from the mining, and the old mine just contemplated milling, whereas the metallurgy we've done shows that heap leaching and run of mine heap leaching is amenable for parts of the Atlanta system, the lower grade that is. The metallurgy is well advanced. It's
Mhm.
not a outstanding or lurking concern or question, which is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
We completed our phase one metallurgy about a year ago, and we laid out a conventional Nevada oxide processing method. Phase two metallurgy, which is providing further definition within the Atlanta resource zone, will be completed in the next couple months, and we'll be putting that out. But I don't expect any material changes from what we've already put out in phase one.
So your resource is up it includes your second phase, phase two of your exploration program. Is that completed now? Or
That
is
is
phase
complete.
two,
So
that's complete. So phase three now is more of a stepping out, looking at different potential targets going forward. Is that it?
correct. Phase three does not have any resource definition drilling associated to
Yeah.
Atlanta specifically. It's all about stepping out both in the immediate vicinity of Atlanta along
Mhm.
trend, and then also throughout the district to try to find additional satellite deposits.
So you won't be drilling going west of the Atlantic at Atlanta. You will or will not be, what you just showed me that slide that shows the going west towards the silver, high grade silver. Yeah.
Yeah. This part I'll zoom in on the schematic.
Yeah.
This is the claim boundary actually, and you can see the rough outline of the Atlanta caldera.
Right.
Immediately west of the Atlanta resource zone is where it does deepen, but then it quickly starts to shallow out, we now
Oh, I see.
recognize. So we're very interested in this area over here, which we broadly call the Silver Park target. It's
Mhm.
about 5 kilometers east-west, and it hugs the southern boundary of the Atlanta caldera. The other two areas of significant intrigue for us are Atlanta North and Atlanta South, which
Mhm.
also hug the eastern margin of the caldera and are a long trend of the main fault, which we call the West Atlanta Fault. So those three areas, Atlanta North, Atlanta South, and Silver Park, constitute the majority of the ongoing drilling that we're doing.
Mhm.
We have a modification into the BLM in the state right now.
Mhm.
One thing we consistently hear, and even in Nevada, is questions about permitting because there are permitting challenges anywhere you are in the world.
Mhm.
And we're very fortunate that our property is covered by a plan of operation. We've successfully cleared 3 modifications in the last 12 months with the state that have allowed us to drill at over 100 new drill sites without any issue. And the current modification, which we expect to get approval for in early July, is seeking an additional 75 to 80 drill pad sites that have not previously been drilled and are based on the drilling that we've already done in phase three. So we're now at the point where we found a lot of areas of smoke that are tied to anomalies in the CSAMT. They're tied
Mhm.
to major faulting that we've identified. That one area where we've hit 25 meters of 1.1 grams, that is
Yeah.
on the southern margin of a CSAMT anomaly that is completely undrilled.
Ah.
And this phase four modification is going to allow us to go ahead and drill that and a series of other targets. So we'll see what we come up with. Exploration is it's very exciting, especially when it works.
And when the gold prices are higher and people are paying attention, that helps too. So let me
Yeah.
just understand phase three, which you're in now, as I understand it, was more of a reconnaissance, try to establish drill targets. And you're going to do some drilling in phase three, or do you call that phase four? You mentioned phase four.
Yeah, sorry, very messy nomenclature for me. It's going to remain phase three.
Ah,
It's a modification number four with the
okay.
state, but it's all part of the phase three. I apologize.
And you're well funded for doing what you want to do this the next 6 months or so?
Yeah, we are well funded. We have a little over $12 million in the bank right now.
Mhm.
That is going to last us more than 12 months at the current rate, which is not to say that at some point in higher share prices we might not try to take more money in, but we don't have any interest at current share prices to even consider that, and we're well funded for what we think we need to do over the next 12 months.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because at 11 cents US, it doesn't, yeah, it's just, well, one of the reasons I wanted you on here, I want people to understand your story more. I want more people to understand your story because I think it's just not being fully appreciated. Um, what is your what is your corporate goal then, Collin? Is it to, I don't think, given the personnel you have now, that it's going to be for production. I think you're probably looking to build something that will be attractive to a major, maybe that's operating in Nevada. Do I have that right?
I think it's logical. I think it's the most logical path. If you look at Newfound Gold, where I've recently stepped away,
Hmm.
I had gotten to the point where I thought the company had advanced beyond my specific skill set and interest, which is exploration. And we went ahead and attracted a world-class team of mine builders to go ahead
Hmm.
and advance the Queensway project through to production. And I think the team there is capable and excited to do that. And if somebody along the way comes and offers them more than they can say no to, then more than the shareholders can say no to,
Uh-huh.
then I think that they will not make it to production. So I think a similar path is possible with Nevada King, but when you get a truly exciting discovery in Nevada, you tend not to make it even close to that problem. So
Yeah.
I'd be happy to have a sale at an appropriate price to reward our efforts.
Right, for sure. Well, you have, I think, your executive chairman, Paul Matzek. Is that is how I'm pronouncing his name right?
Matisic.
Matzek. Yes, he has a history of being involved with developments that have been picked up, I think, at fair prices in the past, right?
Yeah, we have an impressive team, and Paul has sold seven of his last deals for about $3.5 billion cumulatively, and they've all been essentially development stage assets going off to larger developers or producers.
Hmm. All right. Well, this I can't think of a whole lot more to ask you right now, Colin. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I appreciate you not asking me about the performance of the share price after the resource came out. That's very kind of you, but I'm sure a lot of your listeners would appreciate a bit of a view on it. So I'm happy to throw myself under the bus in that regard. Um, I think a resource estimate coming out can be a very difficult time for the market as a whole to properly assess through the share price what's actually going on. And just something to share, the institutional shareholders that we've been talking to, the analyst community have all been quite enthusiastic about what we've put out.
Hmm.
All the conversations we've had with the technical crowds have been quite impressed.
Hmm.
But those type of people don't necessarily jump in and buy something in the first 30 seconds of trading after a
Right.
resource comes out.
Yeah.
What tends to happen is, there's traders and more retail-oriented people that trade immediately after announcements, and I think that there was a bit of trading that happened quite quickly that does not necessarily reflect a full understanding of the
Right.
resource coming out. So
Hmm.
it can be a challenging point to put out a resource. It's not the first time I've been through it now, but
Yeah.
I don't think that it properly reflects the quality of this resource. We've now got the second highest grade oxide deposit that's over 1 million ounces in the United States. And if I could pick anywhere on the map to put it, I wouldn't put it anywhere else. So if we are so fortunate as to have a discovery at one of these other areas,
Yeah.
it's going to be exciting times ahead. So.
Right. Yeah. It's buy the rumor, sell the news. A lot of times, the people that are in and out of the market, traders rather than investors, longer term. So your institutional people, and it's good you have, as I mentioned earlier, about half of the company is owned by management and by institutions. So there's that steady part, and you have enough money now to get you through some significant exploration efforts, and hopefully you make some progress. And so I guess in closing, then we should just think, watch the news, right? And you maybe be doing some drilling. Any idea when you might start drilling? You have some targets in mind?
Yeah, and just major credit to John Sklodnik, who came on as president a few months ago, because when he came on, we had about 2% institutional shareholding, and
Oh,
we now have 11%. So
oh,
in a very few short months, we've brought on Franklin Templeton and
hmm,
DWS and Ixios, and that element of our shareholder base is growing, which of course is uh, very significant in terms of a validation on what we're working on. In terms of drilling, we haven't really stopped drilling for 4 years.
hmm,
We are not drilling as we speak, but that's only because the drill is down for 3 weeks of scheduled maintenance. And when the drill does get back towards the end of June, we expect to turn towards those new areas that we're just waiting on permission to get to get permitted for drilling. So there's going to be a lot of drilling ongoing at Silver Park. at Atlanta South and at Atlanta North.
Yeah, I'd like to just mention to my listeners, to my viewers here, that you put together a very good explanation of the geology that I would really I guess on a video that you've done on your website, and would suggest to my viewers that they go there and look at that, because I think you have visual images. You gave us a couple here, Collin. Thank you for that. But on that more extensive explanation, I think in lay terms, you've explained very well the geology and what you're aiming to do. So I think that was very helpful. And I'll put that up on my YouTube site, and on my Substack site, I'll provide a link so people can easily go to that. Collin, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us. It's really great to have you. I think you have a lot of interesting things going on in your life, and personally, as a father and as a CEO, working with several very promising companies. So I wish you all the best. It's going to be fun following your career. It has been so far, and I think it's people ought to be paying attention to what you're doing with this company and a couple of the others. So I look forward to talking to you sometime in the future about some of those, couple of those other deals as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I really appreciate it, and thanks for spotlighting what we're working on over here.
You bet. Well, that's it, folks, for this week. Actually, it's not quite, because I've done another video with a new company. I'm not going to tell you who it is. That's privy only to my subscribers, my paid subscribers. They will be getting my recommendation in the newsletter this weekend. Also, I have interviewed the CEO, and that will be on YouTube later in the week as well. Keep your eyes open on your inbox for the update on that. And it's an exciting company. I think you're going to want to know about it. And also, I think I'm going to be talking to Chen Lin very soon about NerveGen, a company that he's following very well. And they came out with some results from the tests that they've done for spinal cord injuries, and it's very promising. And Chen's going to be with me, I think, to talk about that as well. So until we meet again, goodbye and God's blessings to you.